Hello, welcome to our Econ 456 final presentation, where we are going to be talking about New York City transportation. My name is Tyler Schmidt.
And I'm Vlad Kharitonov.
So the main question we wanted to answer is what causes people to choose a specific mode of transportation in New York City. The three main methods we looked at was driving, public transportation, and walking. Starting with driving, some of the pros are that it is the most convenient and it has the highest proximity. Most people who drive directly from their house to work. And since it's their own vehicle, it's very convenient since they just have to walk outside. Some of the cons, though, are that it's the least affordable, especially with gas and toll prices, and it's prone to negative externalities, some of which could be traffic, congestion, or even accidents on the road. Moving on to public transportation, some of the pros are that it's very affordable for most New York City residents, and it's faster than driving because there's no vehicle congestion. Some of the cons are that there are safety issues with public transportation. It's also not always reliable as it can be late, and it's not always accessible depending on which of the five boroughs you live in. Finally, with walking, the pros are that it is the cleanest and the most reliable. The cons, however, are that it requires very close proximity to your work because of how slow it is compared to the other transportation methods, and there's a lot of possible safety concerns, especially if you are walking alone. And with all of this being said, it turns out that walking and public transportation are the best methods of transportation for New York City residents. And with that being said, a lot of people still choose to drive.
So there's a number of reasons for why people still drive if walking and subway are so popular. The first of which being that it's perceived to be more reliable since, like Tyler said, all you have to do is walk outside and get into your own car and it's always going to be there at the time that you need it to be, as opposed to the subway, which can sometimes be delayed or run late. It also depends on what part of New York City you live in, since the subway is not always easy to access since a lot of the more populated neighborhoods in Queens are located further from subway stations as opposed to neighborhoods in Manhattan. The distance from subway to neighborhoods is like 5 miles in Queens, whereas the distance in Manhattan is like less than half a mile usually. Another big part of why people still choose to drive is many of the workers in New York City don't live in New York City. So if they are commuting from outside of the five boroughs, they choose to drive since there's just less subway access outside of the main hub of New York City, like Manhattan. It's also if they commute between the five boroughs. So if you're living in Queens and you're commuting to Manhattan, you are most likely going to choose to drive. And it shows that most people do choose to drive, especially if they live in Queens or the Bronx. It's also important to note that if everybody decided to take the subway or walk, then congestion on like in terms of driving would go down, and congestion for walking and subway would increase substantially. So looking at some data from New York City, we can see that if you work in Manhattan, your subway usage is going to be significantly higher as opposed to if you don't work in Manhattan. This piggybacks off of what I said in the previous slide about Manhattan being the hub of like public transit for New York. And as you kind of move away from Manhattan, you see less and less public transit usage and I mean, obviously, less walking if you're living further from your place of work. And more people are using the car. And this can be reflected in the little pie chart to the right, where it shows that nearly one third of people choose to drive to work, especially if they work in a non Manhattan borough. And thank you.
Thank you very much.